What up?
What's up?
What's up?
What you putting in the background?
I don't know. First, I got to figure out how to do it.
Oh, you'll figure it out.
How's everyone doing today? Man, it is so windy in my house.
It's so beautiful out. It's 68 degrees.
Hush.
I love it. Sorry.
Where's the background, Jill?
I don't know. My background?
My background. What do I hit?
You gotta hit the green screen again so that the pictures have that line up. And you can hit the plus to find the picture you want.
Yeah. This is constantly changing.
Yeah.
There it is. Why are they always moving it?
Did they move it again?
Constantly moving it. There we go. Hey everyone, welcome to the live. We are on YouTube and TikTok today again. How's everyone doing? The wind is like, it's got to be blowing 60 mile an hour, just constant. Just constant. It's crazy.
I mean, it's a little windy outside, but it isn't too bad, but it's warm. The wind is warm. The day is warm.
Hi, Katie. Yes, we're on. Yes. Hi, Andrea. Sarcastic Sister. How you guys doing? Jules, K-Bass. Everyone on TikTok, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Shoot. We're taking questions today. We're taking oil and gas questions. This is a normal Q&A. I don't have an interview for today. We have a live goal up here. Corn, please gift the moderator. If you have questions about oil and gas, Canada, energy, tariffs, all that kind of stuff, please feel free to ask. Happy to answer any questions I can. We're going to start off today. You see that, Jill? Natural gas prices up big today, over 10%. They rose 8% yesterday. I made a piece of content earlier explaining to people. Basically, I told them, find another $1,000. If you're one of those people that got $900,000, $1,100, $1,200 utility bills this winter, you might want to find another $1,000 for your utility bills this summer. Utility bills this summer are going to be higher than they were this winter. Okay, if you got a $1,200 electric bill this winter, get ready. You're probably looking at $1,300 to $1,500 this summer. So over the summer months, you're probably going to need about $1,000 more than you needed over the winter months to pay your utilities. Because as I've been saying for a long time, natural gas prices are just going through the roof. We're currently producing 106 billion cubic feet of natural gas a day. And between our consumption and our exports, we're using 115. We're using more than we're making, and inventory levels are dropping. We're 12% below the 5-year average. Okay? Natural gas prices in the United States are going to continue to rise. There will be days where they drop. There will be weeks when they drop. But over the long term, they are going to continue to rise. I've been telling you guys this for 3 weeks. And since I started, it's probably up 40% since I started telling you guys this was going to happen. Okay? This is going to continue. Another thing that's going on with these natural gas prices, Germany has told Russia that they are no longer interested in talking to them about supplying Germany with natural gas. So that's more natural gas we're going to have to export. Also in February, we exported more natural gas than we ever had in history, more than ever. ever, ever, ever. Okay? So natural gas prices are going to continue to rise. If you live in an area where your electricity is generated with natural gas, your utility bills are going to go through the roof. They have already. They're going to continue to do that. The good news is spring is here and temperatures are mild. The bad news is that spring is here and it doesn't last that long. When you start seeing forecasts for, I don't know, depending on where you live, but when you start seeing heat waves, sweltering heat, 100 degrees, when you start seeing those forecasts, natural gas prices are going to just pop off. They're going to pop off. Okay? If you can hear a lot of wind in the background, like the wind's blowing 60 mile an hour right outside that window. I don't know can you hear it, Jill? But
so before I came up, I could hear it, but now that I'm up here, it like cut it out. So I don't know if the people in the chat are hearing it.
will West Texas cotton farmers be impacted by the tariffs? If they send that cotton to Canada, they will be. If they send that cotton to Canada, they will be. So it just depends on where your cotton goes, right? Here is a very specific oil question for you. Well constructed in 1989 with 1,000 feet of 8 5/8 drilled to 62.55 and 4.5 inch run to bottom. What would be the most likely bit size used below the 8 5/8? In 1989, so you got to keep in mind we're talking 1989, not 2024, right? So we actually ran bigger bits back in those days. So you're probably looking at like a 6 1/4. You'd be looking at something bigger than you would see in a newer class well, right? Are you trying to cement behind that 4.5? Are you plugging back and trying to squeeze behind casing uphole where you don't have any cement to do like an uphole recompletion? Is that what you're working on? Sounds like that's what he's working on. What do you think, Jill?
I don't know. You're really gas expert person for all that, not me.
Yeah, here's the thing. You know, back in them days, 1989, okay? 1989, they could have run anything, okay? You got to, no, I'm serious. You got to, what was the market like in 1989? What were people using? How busy were we? Like, they could have done anything, right? There ain't no telling what they did. We did some crazy shit in 1989. I know we did, okay? I figured 6 1/4. I'm calculating 260 sacks behind the 4.5. If you knew, if you had the data from the original cement job and how much they pumped and you knew where top of cement was, you could actually calculate the hole size. But I do think it's, yeah, I said 6 1/4. You thought 6 1/4. It's probably 6 1/4, but don't be surprised if it's a little bit bigger. So if you're doing, you know, if you're, yeah, in PA, whatever showed up is what they ran in Pennsylvania. I know I've been there. Because in 1989 in the oil field in Pennsylvania, you went out to location and you would have thought it was 1929. But if you're cementing behind pipe, I would give myself a good buffer because since you can't pin down what that open hole size is, what that drill bit size is, I would add a little cement to the mix if that's what you're doing, just to cover yourself. Great question. I don't get a lot of operational questions. I wish I did. I wish I got a lot more of those, even though most people don't know what we're talking about. Is the oil Canada sends to the U.S. the same as Russian oil? It's not the same, but it would serve the same purpose. It's not the same oil, but it would serve the same purpose. If you're really asking me if Russian oil could replace Canadian oil, the answer is yes. If that's what you're really asking me, the answer is yes. Mr. Global says cement like Jed Clampett's cement pond from Beverly Hillbillies. That is true. That's how we say it in Oklahoma. In Texas, we say cement. People in Pennsylvania probably say cement. Cement?
I can answer that.
We say cement. What?
Cement. Yes, I can answer that one. Cement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not the right way to say it.
Um,
We haven't really heard from Bob, but I did see a video Bob made today, and it was hilarious. I thought about stitching it, but I haven't yet. He made a video saying, "We've only lost half of our stock market's value. That's not that bad." Bob. We say concrete. Well, this is not concrete. Yeah, concrete and cement are two different things. Yeah. This is a special type of cement. This cement has an unbelievable tensile strength. How's Nebraska doing? I heard they're going broke. I heard Nebraska's going broke, but when will the oil companies start to get nervous with the new administration's chaos? They're not getting nervous. They're not getting nervous. And that is because oil has fallen, I don't know, what, 10% at the most over the last couple of months. Natural gas has more than doubled. And they sell a shit ton of natural gas. So any losses oil companies are currently incurring for 8-10%, whatever it is, drop in oil prices, they're making twice as much as that back in natural gas prices. So they're not, trust me, they're not sweating. Yeah, someone help Tommy. Someone show Tommy to the door. Bye, Tommy. Some people are so high maintenance. Tommy thought he was so important. How fast can we bounce back from this? It depends on how bad it gets. Like, we're not even... You think it's bad now, you just wait till July. If you think it's bad now, wait till July when we're in a deep recession. Firecracker sales plummet will be the headlines on July 4th. Did Ukraine sign the minerals deal? I don't think they did they? Unless something happened in the last hour. Hi, Lauren. Thank you for joining us from Blue Sky. Welcome. What, Jill?
I have not heard anything about that.
So is the drop in gas prices due to lower oil price? Even expensive stations are below $3 a gallon. So on a national average, gas prices are basically exactly where they were a month ago. So, you know, what we're seeing, and actually they're up just a tiny bit today. They're up a tiny bit today, and we, you know, with all this warm weather coming, and What we have to see is if the gas prices overcome the lower oil prices. Sweden, welcome. Someone from Sweden's here. But yeah, gas prices haven't really fallen that much. I mean, they've fallen a few cents, but if you look this month and last month, they're about the same price, right? We're fixing to swap to summer blend and go into spring, and a lot of things are about to happen. Oil prices are going to have to fall significantly more for gas prices to not increase significantly because we're going into spring and because of the summer blend. So you're going to need oil to see gas prices drop anymore, any significant number at all that makes a difference to anybody. You're probably going to need to see oil at $60 or less, or they will just continue to rise. Or, we may just see, does that say what I think it says? We may just see, refiners in the US export more gas to keep the prices up. I'm telling you, there's a couple of things putting downward pressure on gas, and there's 100 things trying to prevent that from happening. So we have to see who wins, basically. Stock market is down 252 today. So it's down a lot more than that earlier. That's not bad. Andrea says, just got a breaking news report that Ukraine deal might be signed today. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you so much for the gifts. Thank you, people from Canada. What are my TikTok accounts? This one and Mr. Global 2.0. That's the only two I have. The 2.0, I don't know. The 2.0 probably has 80,000 followers. Maybe 85. I'm not sure. But this one and Mr. Global 2.0. Hello, Lorianne. How are you? What's the threshold for oil prices to cause closed wells? I assume you mean just shutting a well in. So that is much different for oil wells than it is for natural gas wells. That is much different. And it depends completely on the LEO or LOE. The LOE drives what happens with an oil well. The LOE is lease operating expense. Basically, how much does it cost to produce oil from a well, right? And there's other factors involved. So you may produce a well even though it's losing money, because in your contracts and agreements with landowners and mineral owners, you have to produce. You have to produce, and you could potentially, if you don't produce, you could potentially lose your lease. So, you can have a couple of thousand acres under lease, but you got to keep this one well operating on that lease to hold the lease. So oftentimes oil companies will continue producing oil on wells that are losing money, because that's cheaper than losing that 2,000 acre lease, which, that could be a $50,000 lease. So there's a lot of things involved in that. So there's not a specific price. It's literally a well by well determination. How important is the lease? How much does it cost to operate that well? All of these things matter. If they choose to not operate the well and shut it in, 99% of the time they still have to pay the mineral rights owner, right? They have to pay the mineral rights owner what's called a shut-in fee. So if they decide they're not going to produce that well, they're still paying somebody for being responsible for it and operating it. And so they have to pay what's called a shut-in fee. So if the shut-in fee is cheaper than the losses on the well, they may do that. So, there's a dozen things that goes into whether they decide to shut in a well or not. Now, typically gas wells are much different because they tend to flow on their own and their lease operating expenses tend to be much less, right? So you can see very low gas producing wells continue to be open and produce gas. That's not the case so much with oil wells. Should you get a generator if you need one? If you need one. Thank you, Personal Finance. Did Canada close trade like Mexico? Not that I'm aware of. It, things are happening so fast these days. People ask me questions, and I don't know, because if you're not watching the news and getting the headlines every 20 seconds, something could literally happen and you missed it. Because just so much is happening, just super fast. Can the trading currency change from the dollar to another currency? What would that look like? Typically, the trading currency changes from something other than a dollar back to a dollar. That's why this whole BRICS thing is such a joke. So let's say Saudi Arabia decides to buy something. Let's say China buys oil from Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia says, we'll accept the yuan, right? The Chinese currency, the yuan. Everyone freaks out because they're not using the petrodollar, right? Except the first thing Saudi Arabia does when it receives that Chinese currency is it exchanges it for dollars, because dollars have the utility, the flexibility. They can do anything they want with those dollars. They can't do what they want with the Chinese currency. So it doesn't matter so much what these companies are trading in if they still exchange those currencies for the US dollar, because they can do anything in the world with a dollar, and the Chinese currency has a ton of restrictions on it. There's a lot of things you can't do. So the first thing they do is exchange it for the American dollar. That's why BRICS is not a big threat. David, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Rough 10 days here, but want to hear facts. Will net prices of Canadian oil fall? What do you think that impact is going to be for them? Sorry if you've already answered this. I do expect Canadian prices to fall. They fell again today. They're down to about $56 a barrel. That is for Western Canadian Select, 56 bucks. Most places, all the data that I'm getting is that the cost per barrel to produce is about $11. So, even at $56, I think everything's okay in Canada, but we'll have to see if that continues to fall. I actually don't think it'll fall much more, just because the tariffs aren't going to equate to us buying less oil. We're still going to buy that oil. $56, $60 oil with a 10% tariff on it is still $10 cheaper than the alternative per barrel on a per barrel basis. We're still going to buy it. You're still going to produce it as long as it's profitable for you. So as long as we continue to buy it. Also, I think it's next month they're going to approve night loading off the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Currently, there's like 20 tankers a month that they're loading from the Trans Mountain expansion. That's fixing to increase to 30. The reason it's only 20 is because they can't load ships at night right now because it's dark. So they've gotten approval to load ships at night. I'm sure they have to install a bunch of lighting and all kinds of stuff so they can work at night. But that's expected to be completed next month. And once that's completed, exports from the Trans Mountain pipeline in Canada will increase by roughly 30%. So between that and the fact that the United States is going to continue buying Canadian oil even though it's tariffed, I don't see Canadian oil falling much more because there's still going to be a demand for it, right? Now, of course, the entire global economy could collapse. That's always a thing. And, we're projected to have a big contraction in the United States at the end of the first quarter. If that happens, all bets are off with oil prices globally. There's no telling what prices are going to do. So we're going to have to see. If everything kind of rides like it is right now, it'll be fine. But be looking for those first quarter GDP numbers, because if we have a huge contraction, a lot of stuff could fall very quickly. Very quickly. Thank you again for that super chat. I really appreciate it. Can you explain what a firm commitment with regards to oil and gas transactions means? A firm commitment is everything short of signing the dotted line. A firm commitment is basically an agreement. Like, a firm commitment is no different than a commitment. It's just everything short, because if they had a contract, they would say, we have a contract, right? A firm commitment is more like a promise, like a verbal promise. That's all it is. So you can put a little bit of weight towards term firm commitment. If the contract ain't signed, it ain't shit. And that's how I handle all business in my life. If I don't have someone's signature, then I ain't done shit. I don't care about your firm commitment. I want a signature, right? So don't give firm commitments a lot of weight. Not that it's a bad thing, but it just means if there's not a contract, I don't care what they say. Thank you so much for the gifts over here. Please gift the moderator. Why do we personify oil like it's a nationalized resource? It's not ours or theirs. It's Exxon's or BP's. I've been saying this to people for a long time. We've gotten into this mode where it's always us versus them. We do this, they do that. There is no we. There is no they. It's companies and other companies. Americans are very arrogant about oil production that companies produce in the United States, as if they have anything to do with it. I guess because they got out of bed as an American, then they are somehow responsible for oil production in the United States. It's like, we don't need you. Like, you don't know what anybody needs. Okay? Go back to selling insurance and let the adults talk, or whatever it is you do. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Go talk about what you know. I don't know why we personify it that way. A lot of pride, a lot of pride, a lot of unjust pride, a lot of a lot of ill-gained pride. Don says, insurance is one of Canada's biggest industries. It's probably a lot of countries' biggest industries. I'm not an insurance expert, obviously. I don't know that much about it, other than I buy it and I use it. That's all I know about insurance. Hey, Smarty Pants. There are quite a few American companies up here developing Canadian oil. That's true. A lot of those companies in Canada are actually subsidiaries of American companies. And quite a few of those American companies are actually subsidiaries of European companies. Like, you know what I mean? Um, yeah, that's 100% true. Could Canada put a 25% export tax on oil? Yeah, they could. I mean, they could do whatever they want. Um, should you be investing in oil? I would not recommend investing in oil right now. If you got into something in the natural gas space or the midstream space, that would be much safer than oil. Oil's in now. If you wait 6 to 8 months, it might be a good time to invest in oil because Donald Trump is determined to bring it all crashing down. Buy it after it crashes. Smarty Pants here. He was smart. He sold all of his stuff like 2 weeks ago. I wouldn't touch oil right now, but if you can find a good entry price and buy something at a discount that's a company that's heavily weighted in natural gas or a midstream company, a lot more upside there than there is in oil, at least right now. What other countries other than the United States allow private citizens mineral rights on their land? Any country that does not have a nationalized energy policy, right? And honestly, I don't know that much about Canada. I don't know if a lot of that, if the majority of that goes to private mineral owners or if it's federal land. In the United States, we have certain places where the vast majority of the oil produced is on federal land, and those royalties go to the government. There's also places like the state of Texas. There's almost no federal land in Texas. Over 99% of it is all privately held. Those royalties go to mineral owners. Here in the Western Anadarko Basin, where I live, it's a mix of private and publicly held lands. So I just always assumed that Canada had, you know, private and publicly held land, but I don't know that for sure. It's just an assumption I always made. Ebb says it's mixed. Thank you, Yakety. Warren Buffett is sitting on cash. Did OPEC just lower the price? Not really. OPEC Plus come out and said they would restore some old production cuts. Only 138,000 barrels a day. It's not really. It could be having sort of some psychological effects on the market, but 138,000 barrels ain't nothing. It's less than what it maybe a tenth of 1% of total oil demand in the world. Like it doesn't amount to a hill of beans. So there could be some sentiment there, but it has nothing to do with supply and demand. Um, there's a gentleman, Brian Pinkerton, um, who is the president of an oil company in the United States, who was blaming OPEC. He's a Trump supporting oil executive blaming OPEC for falling oil prices. Uh, even though Donald Trump's been begging them forever to do this. But 138,000 barrels a day ain't nothing. That ain't nothing. We have bigger swings in that just in the Permian Basin of West Texas in a month. We could go up by 138,000 or fall by 138,000. That's nothing because we produce like 6.5 million barrels a day out of the Permian Basin. 138,000 barrel swing ain't nothing for a month. Um, what would happen if someone made an announcement that they'll nationalize U.S. energy production at a State of the Union? I'm not sure what would happen because I don't think the markets would react to it because it's nearly an impossibility in the United States. It's nearly an impossibility. The United States doesn't have the money to nationalize the U.S. oil and gas industry. They would have to cough up trillions of dollars to do that. Trillions that they don't have. So what would probably most likely happen is a lot of people would laugh and that would be the end of it. That's probably what would happen. Will natural gas going up make electricity costs rise? Absolutely. It already is, and it will continue to do so. Yes, it absolutely will. What did you do?
I meant to disconnect him and it connected him.
Who was it?
I don't know, but I kept telling him there's no guest requests.
No, the OPEC increase is not going to be what devastates the oil workers. It'll be Donald Trump that does that. And then they'll be saying, "What happened, Mr. Global?" And I'll be saying, "I told your ass this was going to happen. Don't come crying to me." Insight on Oklahoma natural gas futures. Natural gas everywhere has upward pressure on it. Natural gas everywhere has upward pressure on it. It's for, I mean, that's today. The EIA has natural gas being higher for all of 2025 and all of 2026. So, you know, there's opportunity there if you're looking for opportunity. Just make good choices. Smarty Pants says, depending on what happens to oil prices between now and April, the OPEC Plus could change their plans. Absolutely. You know, well, yeah, I think oil 68, 67, $68 today. Um, you know, if oil touches $65, OPEC probably pulls the plug on that deal. and they'll come out and say, we're going to wait one more quarter. And then the next date would potentially be August 1st. But yeah, Smarty Pants is 100% right on that. If oil prices continue softening, OPEC's going to pull the plug, 100%. I live in northern Indiana and we burn Canadian oil. Your speculation on oil prices. It's like 56 bucks today. It could drop a little bit more, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to pay significantly less. I mean, let's be honest. Companies like to hoard as much profit as possible, and they generally don't pass on a lot of savings to the end users. And as long as you're in the position of an end user, then you're susceptible to, what is this? Looks like the market is tanking right now. It was down 250 when we started the live. Now it's down a little over 500. It's kind of fallen on its ass. I wonder what's happening. What are the impacts of Venezuela and Chevron? Not significant. Not significant. Well, it won't be that big of a deal. Rise in natural gas today was a lot of short covering. Yes, it was. It was a lot of short covering. There's still a lot of upward pressure on natural gas prices, though. It's like I said earlier, it could fall back a little bit, but long term, over the year and into 2026, expect it to be higher. Expect it to be significantly higher. You cannot consume any type of commodity. You cannot consume more of it than you produce and not have rising prices. And we're at nearly 10 billion cubic feet a day of consumption that is greater than production. Between our consumption and our exports, 10 billion cubic feet a day. That's 300 billion cubic feet a month. We've got a couple of trillion cubic feet in storage. So we're kind of coming to a crossroads on natural gas. We just are, and it'll look okay throughout the spring months because temperatures will be mild. But when we get into, if we have a really hot summer, you better hold on to your pants. I wonder if the market is responding to Trump's response to Trudeau that being even higher tariffs if Canada puts tariffs on America. Probably. That must be why I'm sitting here watching this tank right before my eyes. Because the president's running his mouth again. What percentage does Canada refine itself? Canada's refining capacity is just right about at its consumption, right? So they can, I believe they refine about 1.9 million barrels of oil a day, which would, and then plus depending on their natural gas liquids. But they basically refine just right at their consumption level.
Some people don't know what you're talking about when you're saying it's tanking
The market,
because it just came in. Yeah, they must have just came in.
yeah. Yeah, the market was down 250 when we started, and I looked and it was down 500, and someone said Donald Trump's talking, and I said, well, that makes sense. So, in your opinion, what is the largest likely geopolitical concern with respect to the oil and gas industry? Um, that's a good question. And honestly, I don't have a lot of concerns, but I mean, if I had a concern, it would obviously be OPEC and Trump trying to influence everything they do. I'm just really confident that OPEC's not going to budge much when it comes to Donald Trump and what he wants. But you cannot set aside the fact or disregard the fact that OPEC is capable and has shown us historically that they are willing to completely destruct the U.S. oil and gas industry. They have that capability 100%. And it's just, are they willing to lose the amount of money they have to lose to do it? I don't think they are. But that doesn't mean they don't have the capability. How high will our gas prices go under Trump? I don't think they're going to go that high. I think, depending what happens with the economy, the economy is going to kind of throw a lot of uncertainty into gas prices. But even like worst case scenario, I don't see gas prices in the United States, going over 350. You know, if anything, they'll likely be a few cents less on average across the whole year for 2024. The EIA, I think, is predicting about 10 cents less a gallon on average. That they've had that prediction for 2025 since late 2023. So it's you're not going to see much difference, and I certainly don't think they'll be higher. They're just not going to be anywhere near as low as Donald Trump has been telling people. He's been telling people he's going to cut gas prices in half. That's not a thing unless he completely melts the entire economy. Then they could be half for a little bit. And then when they come back, they'll be higher than they were under Biden because we'll lose refineries. So we'll just see what happens. Is any of the oil drilled in the Permian Basin sold to other regions of the United States, like the East Coast or the West Coast? The vast, vast, vast majority of the oil produced in the Permian Basin is actually exported. Now, I can't, and nobody can sit here and tell you this much goes here, this much goes here, this much goes here, because it's constantly changing. It's evergreen. There's different, buyers and contracts in place. But the vast majority of it is exported. Over 95% of it is exported out of the United States. And, who gets to divvy up what's left over that can change on a month-to-month basis. I can tell you none of it's going to the West Coast, though. None of it's going to the West Coast. Just read an article that U.S. dealership says that his $80,000 trucks are now priced at $100,000. Truck sales are going to tank. Yeah, auto sales are definitely going to tank. That's for sure. I saw my delivery price for my gas and electric bill cost over $200. What's up with that? So the delivery charges and those delivery type fees are what utility companies all over the country, mainly, I'm guessing you live in a deregulated state. If you live in a deregulated state, or if you don't know, if you live in a deregulated state, you might want to Google it, because if you live in a deregulated state, what the utility companies are doing is they're beating people over the head with delivery fees, because it's one of those fees that doesn't necessarily, they have more leeway in how they bill out and charge for those fees. It's not necessarily strictly regulated by your state regulatory agency, if you even have one. And they're basically price gouging. They're basically price gouging with those delivery fees. That's what they're doing. You know, I paid $58,000 Canadian for my F-150 in 2017. I think that's really close to what I paid for mine. I don't remember what year. I don't remember what year model mine is. I think it's a 22 or 23, but I think I paid maybe 60. I'm not sure. Is that due to shipping costs? Like it's cheaper to import oil, are very close to what they are in a pipeline. So, you know, the shipping costs aren't a deal breaker in most places. Sometimes they are. If you're forced to pay shipping costs by rail, that can definitely be a deal breaker. But if you have pipelines or tankers, it's much cheaper. You're looking at $1 or less per barrel. Not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. Shipping costs, you know, unless you're shipping it by rail, it's not that big of a deal. Or truck. Or truck. Do you think Canada will stop exporting and importing with the US and use another country to trade with? I really don't think so. I think they'll continue to export oil. Even if they come out and say they won't, I still think they will. Ford is saying he's going to cut off the power. I still don't think he will. But he might, you know, but I just don't think he will. That's just my opinion. I do not think he will, right? But we'll see what happens. I'm still saying I don't think it's going to happen. That is a huge, huge deal to do that. Hi, Stacy Baker. I think he will. I think he'll slap a significant tariff on it. I'm pretty sure he's already slapped a 25% tariff on that electricity. There could be even more additional tariffs on that electricity, but to cut it off is, I would describe that as a very extreme escalation. And I think a lot more has to happen before he would do that. Like, but we'll see. I just don't think he will. Do I think Trump has escalated the situation too much? Absolutely. Absolutely, he has. There's no doubt about that. MBW says, I think they should cut it. Look, I've said before, I would have cut it the first day. I would have escalated it all the way to the top day one. You know, if we're gonna do this, let's do it and get it over with. I don't like dragging shit out for 6 months. Let's just do it right now. Then we can, you know, we can worry about something else tomorrow. Hi, Daria. Oh, I got a puzzle. I'm getting really good at that puzzle.
You should be because you are always getting the puzzle. I don't understand it.
PL says, I think to truck is $20 a barrel, rail 15. I pay $3 a barrel to truck my oil. It's about $3. What'd you say, Jill?
I said you should be getting good at them puzzles because you are always getting them.
Yeah, and it's just one piece. Like it's one piece that you got to put in one spot. And you
I
can
know.
see the piece and you can see the spot.
Yes. Sometimes I overdo it, right? Like I'm like slide it across to get it out of the way, and yeah, that don't work.
What's my advice on your 401k? You know, I don't typically give that kind of advice, but just leave it alone. Your 401k grows out of things like this. These are things, you know, it'll look terrible for the next year or two. Who knows how long it'll look terrible, but when we come out of it, it's going to look fantastic. Don't touch your 401k. I wouldn't. It's kind of messed up that you need everything to crash and then come back for your 401k to really, you know, grow like they expect it to over 20, 30 years. But that's just how it works. So unless you need it sometime soon, which may be the case, but if you don't need it, I'd leave it alone. I'm going to leave mine alone. If you are retiring in the next 2 years, wouldn't it make sense to go to something stable? If you're retiring in the next 2 years, then you need to talk to somebody. You know, you need to talk to a professional. But you don't need a professional to tell you if you're not retiring in the next couple of years to just leave it alone. Like anybody can tell you that. Tom, I've not muted Jill one time. I don't mute Jill. She mutes herself.
That's funny. I have to tell people in mind that too. That I do not mute you. Well, I have muted you. Never mind. knows, Tom. He knows it's a joke.
Yeah, I know.
That's all. Yeah.
Thank you for the gifts, everyone. I'm going to reset my goal before Jill tells me to.
Don't forget to like and share the live. Like. Let's get him up to 20K. And tap his face. No, I mute so that I don't make noise while he's trying to talk. Because I guess my computer sometimes sounds like a CPAP.
3:04 Eastern Standard Time. HuffPost headline: Trump abruptly walks back his directive to fire thousands of federal employees. He probably saw the data from the Atlanta Fed. Or maybe he saw the stock market just fall another 250 points in the last few minutes. I asked to hear from you last night, and the ladies blocked me. That's because I don't talk shop at night, James. I don't talk oil and gas at night. If you see me on a live at night with my friends, I'm just relaxing. I'm off work.
The ladies did not block him. That was you.
Was it me?
Yes, it was you.
Okay.
He said, "I want to hear Mr. That's the one that said, "I want to hear Mr. Global."
I widely shared your Danielle Smith video about her lying about pipelines making oil cheaper from the other day. Thank you so much, Daria. It is a lie. It's a well-established lie.
So James, I unblocked you, but just know that was you waiting for that, Amani? Just know that when you come there, you're not going to hear him. Most of the time, he just sits there.
Most of the time I'm asleep.
Yes, absolutely. But he was not then.
Do you see much of a price change from Canadian tariffs on natural gas? I know we produce more than anyone. Yeah, some, obviously, whatever the tariff is, but when it comes to to commodities anyway, the more, I don't know what you call retail type goods, the trade of things, if you're buying widgets from Canada or vice versa, the trade between those things can change drastically with tariffs. They're not tariffs on commodities like energy commodities like oil and natural gas won't really change the trade amounts that much. We're still going to continue importing the same amount of oil. We're still going to continue likely exporting the same amount of refined fuels or natural gas. We'll continue importing the same amount of natural gas. That won't change much because that's a necessity of life. Energy is a necessity of life. People don't need widgets. People don't need fidget spinners, but they need oil and gas, right? So I don't see the tariffs impacting the trade of those two commodities very much at all. How to break through with oil workers about Trump's policies bad for the oil industry. They love him. Do you hear the rig workers talking about politics much? I can look, nobody, here's the thing, nobody talks about politics with me in my industry. Nobody will even speak to me when it comes to politics. They are very tight-lipped around me because they watch my content. And the last thing they want is to be challenged. So, but I've actually seen quite a few oil and gas workers over the years, completely flip on Donald Trump. And it's yeah, smarty pants. It's not that they don't talk politics; they just don't do it around me because they know I'll just start spitting stats like yeah. Why would Donald Trump want to restart the XL pipeline when it's not even close to being finished? It's not even close to being started. Yeah, it's like right now, it's basically as if nothing ever happened. So it's not even close to being started. And I don't know why he wants to restart it. And keep in mind, I supported the Keystone XL when they first came out and said they wanted to build it. I supported it. I thought they were going to twin the Keystone. I thought it would be good for national security. I understood. I fully understood that it would have no impact on oil prices or gas prices in the United States. But the Keystone XL became this political machine football thing. All these people clamoring for it when they don't even know what it does. Just because Donald Trump wanted it. I think he just wants it because he wants a political win. And he expects some company from Canada, apparently, to spend $10 or $12 billion so he can secure some type of political win. Because it has nothing to do with, at this point, with the additional pipelines that we've opened up from Canada, and with, we don't need one. We don't need the XL. We just don't. It's not a thing. If we needed it, I'd say so, but we don't. Would you welcome media interviews from different places? I actually do quite a few media interviews, but I don't post them to my content myself because they keep that trademarked and they own that stuff. So I do media interviews and would do more. I have no problem. I have some media outlets that interview me once a month on a schedule. Where are we at now? Is the market closed yet? It should have. $670 points. That's the question. And I actually have that. I'll be right back. I will be right back. want to show you guys something.
Yes, I am going to tell him to reset his goal when he gets back.
I'm going to show you something.
I do, Navy vet. I do. What's your goal?
Huh?
That's a new goal.
Set your goal. The goal is set. All right, let's go over here and let's go over here. Oh, there it is. How about a little image capture? There it is. Oh, man. There it is right there. See that, Jill?
Well, yes, and that's an old post from 2012. And for the people in YouTube, it says it's by Trump, by the way. It's an old tweet. If the Dow drops 1,000 points in 2 days, the president should be impeached immediately.
What if it drops like 1,200?
He shouldn't just be imprisoned, right? Maybe he should be imprisoned if it drops that much. Not just impeached, both. Prison too.
No, Daria, he's surpassed the 1,000 points. It's dropped more than 1,000 points in the last couple of days. It was 670 just today. For 1,200, you get Vance too.
That's, yes. There we go. And for 1,400, if we hit 1,400, it's Trump, Vance, and is it Johnson? Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm horrible with names, but yeah, I think that's it. They all go. Someone tell me. The House Speaker. What's his name? Because I can't remember.
Mike Johnson.
Yeah, so I was right then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I remembered his name.
Good for you.
Especially with how bad I am.
Hell, Tesla by itself might drop 1,000 points. They might be paying people to get you to take it before it's over with. Yes, we are courteous for buying Canadian oil. We do it out of courtesy. We do it out of courtesy because U.S. companies are so courteous. I'll just leave that right there.
There you go. Make it smaller. Perfect. Oh, a little over. There you go.
Saying Canada does the U.S. a favor by selling it cheap. No, they're saying that the United States is doing Canada a favor by buying it cheap. They're saying that they're buying Canadian oil as a courtesy, even though it's about what $17 cheaper than the alternative. Your response on the courtesy was very much the Principal Adderson from Billy Madison. Canadian oil is sour, that's why it's cheaper. That's not a thing. If Canadian oil is cheaper because it's sour, then why would the alternative that's also sour also be $17 a barrel more? That's not why Canadian oil is cheaper. Yeah, I know all about Canadian oil. I know it's sour, but that's not why it's cheaper. That's a myth. That's a misnomer. That's right. I didn't get money from my contracts with oil companies. I got thank yous and cupcakes because they did it to me as they worked with me as a courtesy. They even funded my 401k with extra sprinkles on my cupcakes. Thank you, Rob. Why is Canadian oil cheaper? Canadian oil is cheaper because it's trapped in a captive market because they don't have very many buyers. They can only sell the vast majority of the oil they wish to export to the United States. If they had their oil more available to the global market with some more pipelines, you would have a lot more bidders, you would have a lot more people trying to purchase it, and it would decrease the differential between WCS and WTI. The reason WTI is the price it is because the United States lifted the export ban. The reason the United States lifted the export ban was to increase the price of WTI, American oil, West Texas Intermediate oil. That's why they lifted the export ban, was to get more money per barrel. That's the same thing Canada needs to do. That's the same thing Canada needs to do. They need access to more markets. More markets, more bidders, higher prices. If you go to an auction and there's one person bidding or two people bidding, you're not going to get a lot of money for whatever you're selling. If there's 1,000 people bidding, you'll get more money. More demand, more interest, drives up the price. That's why Canadian oil is cheaper. If the WCS that we import into the United States today, if that oil was a light oil, It would not be significantly more expensive because they have no way to get it out to the broad market, to the global market. So when you talk about the quality of crude oil, whether it's heavy or light, that's a matter of cents. Okay, that's you're talking nickels and dimes when you're talking about per gallon. When you're talking about quality, um, the marketing and logistics of your product has a significantly higher impact on the price of it than the quality of it. And that concept, or whatever you want to call it, is widely agreed upon by pretty much every oil and gas expert in the world. Not that the quality doesn't impact the price, but the biggest driver of the price is the marketability of the oil, the logistics. Barrister's back in here. I thought I blocked Barrister. What's he doing in here?
Barrister, don't tell him I unblocked you.
I blocked that guy. What's he doing in my live?
I don't know. I have no idea how he got back out of that on that block. I just don't know.
He's sneaky, ain't he?
Yeah, he must have unblocked himself.
You know, Barrister's one of those people that, what is he, 57 years old?
Yes, he is.
59. Barrister's one of those people that as a grown adult, you can tell exactly what they look like as a kid. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
There's certain people you meet and you're like, wow, I can tell what you look like as a kid. I don't look anything like I looked as a kid, but some people do. You think he had his hair slicked back and like, you think he had all that hair product when he was a kid, or do you think he had a mop?
No, he probably took good care of his hair. That's why it's so nice today.
Sean, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. What are some of the main talking points do you expect from Trump tonight? Oil and gas. He is going to say the exact same thing he's always said. He's going to say, we're going to drill, baby, drill. Even though the oil companies have said we're not doing that, he's just going to keep repeating everything he's said before. And he's probably going to say, oh, you know, it'll get a little bit worse before it gets better. He's going to say he's going to bring down your gas prices. We're going to have the lowest energy prices in the world. That's what he's going to say, even though utility prices are already skyrocketing and about to go up even more. Yeah. Yes, I would expect your propane prices to largely follow whatever natural gas is doing. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, so much for the gifts. I probably won't even watch it. I don't typically watch that kind of shit. I don't care what Donald Trump has to say about anything. I mean, I guess I could watch it and make some content, but I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if it's worth me sitting through that to make a video or two.
So, Barrister should give me because I took him out of block.
Barrister should what?
Barrister should be gifting me because I took him out of block.
He should. He absolutely should. I think he owes you at least a galaxy.
No way.
I'm serious. He does. I I get it. That sounds like extortion, but he should at least a galaxy. He probably won't because he's a cheapskate. Did you know that about Barrister? He's a cheapskate.
He is not.
Yeah, he is. Like every time he goes to dinner with someone, they got to pick up the tab. Like he just walks off.
Someone said it would be nice if the host answered a few comments or questions, but I don't think they want that. It's better if I just mute them.
Yeah. Ask me your question now. You can do a reaction video with with the Donald in the upper right corner. I guess I could. Sean says, I'm planning on getting highlights after the speech. That's normally what I do. I normally look at the highlights later and go from there. Will LNG facilities start reducing production numbers? No. If anything, they'll be increasing them. We exported more LNG in February than we ever have. Tina Smith, thank you so much for your bronze membership. I really appreciate that. I think you should make videos and content addressing the misinformation that Trump spreads in regards to oil and gas. Well, here's the thing. I can do all that without watching it because every single thing he says, I'm going to receive on my phone 100 times from my followers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to see it all, even if I don't watch it, because everyone's going to be sending me stuff.
And you do that. You do it.
Yeah. Yeah, don't bother talking to Just Stuff.
Which one is Just Stuff in? TikTok or YouTube?
TikTok.
Okay, because I was like, I didn't see him on the...
Well, you just added him in a comment.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, he's gone. He's not here.
Did you just get rid of him?
Well, a few minutes ago, yeah. Yeah, what he said, it would be nice. Yeah. Do you think he will get resources and cheaper oil from Russia? Is that the play? No, because Russian oil is not cheaper than Canadian. Russian oil is more expensive than Canadian oil. The only way we can purchase Russian oil is by lifting the sanctions on it. And the minute we lift the sanctions on it, the price of it goes up by like $15 a barrel. Yeah. Tell the guy who told you to invest in Boeing to fly a kite. Yeah, I'm not going to tell the guy that's made millions of dollars investing in Boeing to fly a kite. He literally could retire today. He's a real estate agent, and he's made millions of dollars investing in Boeing. I'm not telling him to fly a kite. Thank you for the gifts. Would completing the XL pipeline be a benefit to Canada? It would be a benefit to the company that builds it. It wouldn't be a, you know, if it did open up access to more markets globally, and if that plus the Trans Mountain put enough of that oil on that market to increase the price of it, yes. But the thing is, we don't know with any certainty how much of that oil needs to be on the global market for it to impact the price of all of it, right? You can't put 10% of your product on the global market and expect it to raise the price of all of your product, right? So, and the market will determine when it's worth more money. So is that number 25%? Is that number 50%? Only the market will tell you that. People can make those predictions all day long, but until the market tells you what it did, it's not going to matter what you predict, right? Does Donnie know? Peter Burgess, thank you so much for your bronze membership. Does Donnie know his tariffs aren't affecting your membership prices? That's right. My membership prices are tariff free on YouTube. Thank you so much for the super chat, Mark. Do you think we should go back to the gold standard? So people have asked me that before, and here's the thing. I don't think it matters. I really don't think it matters. But here's the thing. If you back your currency with something like gold, but all of the gold you own is only worth maybe 1/10,000th of your currency, then is it really backing it? You know what I mean? Like if you took the value of all the gold the United States has and you tried to, you know, back your currency with that, it's not going to do a whole lot in my mind, because the value of all that gold isn't worth a drop in a bucket compared to all of that currency. So it's not. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me, but it may not make sense to others. But that's why I don't think it's that, you know, big of a deal. That being said, I'm not an economist, but that just seems to make sense to me. Hi, Janelle. Thank you for the question. How accurate is the show Landman? It's about 98% inaccurate. It's about 98% inaccurate. It's not very accurate at all. Mysterious $200 million crypto short. Wow. You hear that wind, Jill?
Yes, I heard that. So we're supposed to be getting some bad weather tomorrow.
We got storms last night. We had an awesome lightning storm at my house. Thank you for the gifts.
seen that.
But today the wind is blowing 50 or 60 miles an hour, just constant, like nonstop. It's like just. So we're under a very high fire danger today.
So that's what we will be under tomorrow. So apparently we're getting them winds.
Christina Carver asks, "Are you saying we don't have the gold to back our currency?" Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Google the value of all the gold the U.S. holds. I googled this. Once. Now, if there's some way you could manipulate the value of it to make it worth, I don't know, 1,000 times more than it's worth, I don't know how you do that. But if you Google the value of all the gold the U.S. holds, it's not a drop in the bucket compared to the value that we have in this country. Like, there's trillions of dollars of U.S. dollars floating around the world, and the value of all the gold we hold is like in the billions. So is that doing much when that's what you're using to back up your currency? I don't know. I don't feel like that makes sense to me, but thoughts on the housing market this summer? Actually, I think the housing market this summer could heat up a little bit, which may be contrary to what a lot of people think. But if at the end of the first quarter we see a 2.8% contraction in GDP, interest rates are going to start dropping. Interest rates are going to start dropping, and a lot of homes, even though their price won't go down, the cost to purchase them will go down a lot as interest rates go down. I think we see the housing market, which it's always better in the summer anyway. The housing market's very seasonal. We typically move the most properties during the spring and summer. But I think with everything that's happening with the economy, we start to see interest rates drop. And I don't believe, the weird thing about real estate is a really bad economy often creates a really strong real estate market. We definitely moved more property during COVID than any other time in our lives. That was one of the hottest real estate markets the United States has ever experienced, was in the depths of COVID. Because interest rates were just stupid low. It's almost like free money, right? And, that eventually caused housing prices in the United States to skyrocket. The really hot market during COVID caused those real estate prices to skyrocket. So I think it'll heat up this summer. Hi, Juju. Wasn't Donald Trump going to go to Fort Knox and see what was there? I heard something about that, but I never knew if it was real or not. Large investors bought up all the rentals. That's true. A lot of corporations and investors bought up a lot of rental properties, shorted or greatly reduced inventories. The housing inventories in our market where we operate dropped by like 90%. Do we still have a housing shortage? We definitely have a tight housing market. That's why prices are still high. This is still all from COVID. All of the shutdowns during COVID, plus the tariffs, the lumber tariffs from Donald Trump's first administration, which priced a lot of people out of new construction. People forget about that all the time. Donald Trump put tariffs on lumber. His first administration, it made lumber prices skyrocket in the United States. That priced a lot of people out of new construction projects. Why do you hate Trump so much and act like Biden was the greatest president ever? I've been more critical of Joe Biden than most people who aren't Trumpers. I don't know what you're talking about. It seems to me that you're very sensitive to me having opinions about Donald Trump, and so you project that to me thinking Joe Biden was the greatest president ever. I don't think Joe Biden was even in the top 10 of great presidents. I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe be a little less sensitive. Try not to get your feelings hurt because I say something about your dear leader that hurts your feelings. Try to avoid that and just think a little more logically, you know, if you have that capability. I doubt you do.
They're sensitive. They're
Very,
very sensitive.
very sensitive. Yeah, and this isn't a safe space for you. I know you need one, but it's not one.
I always forget how sensitive Trumper men are.
Oh,
I don't,
unbelievably sensitive.
absolutely.
Juju wants to fight me. Says Biden was the best president. I'll fight you on that. Peak Idiocracy says all of the presidents in my life had contributed in some way, shape, or form to where we're at today. That's true. They've all contributed something. Um, but this idea that it would ever occur to me in any way, shape, or form that Joe Biden was a great president is ridiculous. I don't think he was a terrible president, but great? Come on. We've had so many great presidents. Like Joe Biden isn't even in the conversation of great, you know.
I agree with you. He was a good person, but he wasn't a great president.
He was a good person. He did some good things. There's major legislation passed, but he also did some really stupid shit because he's identity politics and all this shit that just wrapped up the Democratic Party and took it over.
Yes.
You know, a lot of dumb shit, but he also did a lot of good. You know. Not a ton of complaints, but definitely some, right? Some complaints.
Yes, I have some.
I do think a lot of the narratives and things that were pushed during the Biden administration put Donald Trump back in office. That's the one thing that pisses me off more about Joe Biden than anything. If I thought Joe Biden was a great president, it would be really hard for me to reconcile the fact that Donald Trump is the president again. If he was a great president, Donald Trump would not be the president right now. That's not a thing.
100% agree.
Conversely, conversely, Donald Trump being a horrible president is the only reason Joe Biden became president. Joe Biden was never going to be the president of the United States. The only reason that happened is because we elected the worst president ever. And that's one thing that Republicans can't figure out. As much as they hate Joe Biden, they can't figure out that the only reason he even had a seat at the table was because they put Donald Trump there. That's it. If Donald Trump was never the president, we would have never heard from Joe Biden again.
And Trump is the worst president. The worst. Trump is the worst president. You can't get any worse. He outdid all of the bad presidents.
Yeah, he definitely should not have tried to run for a second term, which is why I didn't vote for him the first time, because I knew he was full of shit when he said he was only going to run one time. Like, I knew that was a lie. Like, that's not a thing. And he's going to lose when he runs the second time. That's exactly what happened. Biden, Christine says, Biden passed a lot of good administration. He wasn't perfect, but a hell of a lot better than this heel. I agree, Christina. I agree. Christine. A lot of good legislation was passed. 100%. I think he overstepped on some things, which, you know, I think one of the ways Joe Biden failed was he didn't realize how his actions would be perceived in the public, and he didn't do anything to defend himself when that occurred. He largely allowed the Republicans to control the narrative throughout his presidency and say things were what they weren't. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't stick up for himself. And the public tried to make him into one by creating this dark Brandon persona, which was just ridiculous, let's be honest. But I think he could have done things to prevent Donald Trump from regaining the White House. That's my biggest beef with Joe Biden. Really is. Yes, he's an old school institutionalist. That's exactly what Joe Biden is. I think he
Yes.
forgot what year it was. He didn't realize that it's a different time in history. And, you know, the fact that we had just had Donald Trump as a president didn't tell him anything about how he should carry himself as a president. He was very traditional. Those times are long gone. Being traditional doesn't impress people anymore. People don't care about norms and tradition and all this thing, being proper. People don't care about that shit anymore. That's why Donald Trump's the president.
Someone down there said Joe Biden is a traitor. He misspelled Trump.
But I think most people would give up all of Joe Biden's major legislative accomplishments today if he would have achieved the one thing we really needed him to achieve, and that would be preventing Donald Trump from retaking the White House. That was his one biggest job that he needed to do, was to ensure Donald Trump did not get a second term. And I think most people would give up all of those legislative accomplishments for that. That's the one win he needed, and he didn't get it.
Let me help you out there, Echo Chamber, as usual. There you go.
Thank you for the gifts. Where have you traveled in all of your oil and gas career? Everywhere in the United States and places in Europe and the Gulf of Mexico.
So, H down there thinks I can't name 10 presidents. I'm not going to do it in your live because you have other things to talk about. But H, I'm not a Trumper. I can name way more than that. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a timeout for being the bad boy you are and the crybaby you must be.
Are you against the development of oil and gas resources in the United States? No. Why would someone in the oil and gas industry be against oil and gas? That makes no sense. That's a ridiculous question. The idea that Donald Trump supports the development of oil and gas in the United States is just mind-boggling to me. I understand that he has words that he speaks, but quit listening to the words and start looking at the actions. He is anything but supportive of the oil and gas industry. Do you agree with drilling in national parks? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't know anybody that does in my industry. I don't know a single person, and I know a lot of people in my industry, and I don't know a single person that would go drill wells in national parks. And that's why I don't think it's going to happen. And I know some pretty important people. No, that's not a thing that's going to happen. I don't think anyone needs to worry about that. Nobody wants to do it. Now, they may go cut down all the damn trees. You know, they're trying to open up a lot of forest land and national forest land to just basically strip them of the trees. I'm not in the lumber industry. I don't know how those people feel about that, but yeah, shouldn't do that. Yeah, they definitely want to take the trees. What is Trump's motive for tariffing Canada? He just wants to look like a tough guy. He has no motives. He understands, listen, this idea that we're going to get rich off of tariffs is so ridiculous. We could have, you need to think about this. We could control all of the wealth in the entire world and it would not pay down our deficit. There is no getting rich off of tariffs. That's not a thing. It's not a thing. There's literally not enough money in the world to make us rich when you look at our debt. You cannot tariff your way out of debt. I'm sorry, does Canada have 36 trillion fucking dollars? And people just believe this ridiculousness. You could put 100% tariff on every product sold in the entire world and never pay off your debt. That's how much debt we have. It's not a thing that we're going to get rich with tariffs. That's like giving someone that has a minimum wage job, that's like giving them a raise of a nickel and telling them they're going to get rich. That is what tariffs, that's the impact tariffs will have on our economy as far as how much revenue we bring in. It's not going to matter one bit. People have a really hard time, you know, for years we've been talking about math scores in the United States being bad. People have a problem doing math in our country, that's for sure. Mr. Wonderful still won't respond to me when I called him out about his ignorant statement that the oil in Anwar would pay off our national debt. And I know he saw it because Mark Cuban sent it to him and asked him if he would respond to me, and he refuses. Dude literally said the oil in Anwar would pay off our national debt. So I made a video explaining to him how if we controlled all of the oil in the entire world, right? If the entire world was just the United States and we controlled all of the oil produced every day in the entire world, it would take us like 38 years to pay off the national debt. We control, what, 14%? If that. It's fucking stupid. It's like the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Importer pays the tariffs. Exactly. You know, you're literally taking that money from the American people and transferring it to the government. That's what a tariff does. It takes money out of the pocket of the people you say you're making rich and giving it to the government. That's what it's doing. Canada's not giving us that money. We're paying that money to the government. That's a tax on us. When Donald Trump instituted tariffs on Canada, he raised your taxes. That's exactly what he did. He raised your taxes. No two ways about it. The price of your pickup just went up by $20,000. That's a tax, by the way. Totally a tax. I live in Oklahoma. Do you think the earthquakes we started having are a result of fracking? Yes, they are. They're a result of disposing wastewater in injection wells near fault lines. 100%. That's why they stopped doing it. And the number of earthquakes dropped drastically. And what was really funny when all that started happening, when we started having all these earthquakes, I was saying yes. Like I was the only one saying yes. It's because of fracking. It's it's because of we're pumping all this flowback water into fault lines. Of course, that's why it's happening. And it took the industry like 3 or 4 years to finally admit it and do something about it. So, lesson for the day. Hey, you can't pump 100,000 barrels of water a day into a fault line and expect something not to happen, right? Because when you're doing that, you're creating erosion along those contact points in that fault line. You're creating erosion and you're reducing friction. Before you know it, you're having an earthquake. It's really pretty simple. Super, super simple. Did fracking stop or did they change the process? So what they did was they stopped injecting the wastewater into disposal wells that were near fault lines. They didn't stop fracking. They actually increased fracking, but the water that flows from those wells gets sent to injection wells or disposal wells that are often drilled into areas, into rock that is very permeable, that'll just drink all this water you can pump in the ground, right? Well, a lot of times the reason it's that way is because there's fault lines there. So they stopped injecting water into disposal wells near fault lines, and the occurrence of earthquakes fell by over 90%, right? So it wasn't the fracking itself that caused it. It was a byproduct of fracking, right? What are your thoughts on Doug Ford's comments regarding cutting off energy to the United States? I don't think he'll do it. I know he's saying he's going to do it, but I don't think he will. We'll see. I think it's a huge thing to do, and I just, you know, I don't blame him for threatening to do it. I certainly don't blame him for that. I just don't know if it'll get to the point where he makes that decision. That's a huge decision. That's like the ultimate thing, right? Um, but we'll see what happens. You know, I don't know Doug Ford very well. I'm not that familiar with him. Really just started kind of figuring out a little bit about him since all this started. And maybe I'm completely wrong and he just says, fuck it. You know, if he does that, then that tells me he's a lot like me because I would have already done it. I would have done it like day one. I would have. I don't care. I would have done it. And I'm not opposed at all to him doing it. I'm not like opposed to it. That's not why I'm saying he won't do it. I think that's a big thing to do. So we'll see what happens. It's easy for me to say that because I'm not the one that's going to lose my power, right? I might think a little bit differently if that was going to be me. natural gas, 445. Oil prices closed at 68 bucks. Oh, it's past 4 o'clock, Jill. It's time to shut her down for the day.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, everyone, so much for coming in and joining us today for another conversation. We'll be back tomorrow. Still working on some other interviews. I appreciate all the gifts. Thank you so much for the memberships and the super chats. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow with this speech coming out tonight.
I'm thinking we probably will. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for the gifts.
See you guys tomorrow. Y'all have fun.